Playing video games in the 1970s was a far cry from today's immersive experiences, from arcade classics like Pong to revolutionary early home consoles such as the Atari 2600. But how did players adjust to the limited graphics and simple gameplay? What challenges did they face when compared to today's high-definition, high-intensity gaming? Dive into the retro world of 70s video games and discover what made those early days thrilling. You might think Pong was the very first video game, but that's not actually true. In fact, it wasn't even the first tennis game out there. But don't let that fool you. Pong is still one of the most important games in the history of video gaming, and that's no exaggeration. What Pong did was groundbreaking. It showed that video games could be big business, paving the way for both arcade games and home consoles. Without Pong, we might not have had either of those things. When Pong became a huge hit in the summer of 1972, Atari jumped into action, quickly producing arcade cabinets by the end of that year. Just 3 years later, a home version was released, leading to a flood of Pong clones. Thanks to Pong's simple paddles, square ball, electronic sounds, and scoring system, it captured people's imaginations and kicked off the video game craze at home. As Pong revolutionized gaming, it paved the way for the next big leap. So what groundbreaking innovations came with Galaxian? In 1977, Star Wars took the world by storm, and its impact reached far beyond the big screen. Kazunori Sawano, inspired by the iconic film, designed the thrilling arcade game Galaxian in 1979. This game, developed by Namco, introduced players to a starfighter named Galaxip, who was tasked with defending the Earth from alien invaders. Although the initial designs of the enemies resembled TIE fighters, they were later transformed into more bug-like creatures. Galaxian was a game-changer, featuring vibrant RGB color graphics and animating multicolor sprites, which set it apart from its competitors. Its innovative design was partly a response to Taito's hit Space Invaders, and it quickly became a success. Galaxian's groundbreaking features paved the way for its famous sequel, Galaga, in 1981, and influenced countless other games like 1941 and Time Pilot. Galaxian's innovative design transformed arcade gaming, but how did Atari capture the thrill of space exploration in a game just a year later? In 1979, Atari brought the excitement of space exploration to arcades with Lunar Lander, a game that let players experience the thrill of landing on the moon. A decade after the real moon landing, this game allowed players to guide a lunar module as it descended towards the moon's surface. With careful rotation and fuel management, the goal was to land gently on targeted areas. Each attempt was followed by a new challenge with different terrain, keeping the experience fresh and exciting. Lunar Lander was ahead of its time, introducing a feature where players could continue their mission by inserting another quarter for more fuel. This innovation not only made the game more engaging, but also more profitable for arcade owners. The realistic physics used to control the module added to the game's appeal, offering an authentic experience that few games could match in the 1970s. As Lunar Lander captivated players with its lunar challenges, can you guess which revolutionary game from the mid-70s transformed the way we interact with screens? In 1976, Nolan Bushnell, the creator of Pong, decided to take his idea further and co-created Breakout, a game that added a new twist to the classic concept. Unlike Pong, Breakout is a single-player game where you use the same paddle controller to bounce a ball and knock out bricks from a wall. Bushnell enlisted Steve Jobs, who was working at Atari, to help design the game, and Jobs brought in Steve Wozniak from Hewlett-Packard. Together, they worked hard to create a game using as few chips as possible. Their efforts paid off as Breakout not only became a huge success for Atari, but also inspired a whole new genre of games. Although a similar game, Clean Sweep, came out in 1974, it was Breakout that made clearing a screen something players love to do. If you've ever played a game where you remove objects from a screen, you can thank Breakout for that. Breakout's innovative gameplay reshaped arcade experiences, but how did the early 70s continue to evolve the way players interacted with games? In 1976, when most video games involved simply staring at a screen, Midway introduced something exciting with Seawolf. This game put players inside a submarine, where they could peer through a swiveling periscope, aiming at ships moving across the sea. The periscope's left and right movement provided a realistic and fun way to target and destroy ships. While the graphics weren't groundbreaking, the gameplay was captivating and drew players in. Seawolf also stood out by featuring one of the first saved high scores, sparking friendly competition as players tried to outdo each other. The game's innovative cabinet design became iconic, and its success even inspired a colorful sequel a few years later. Seawolf also influenced future games like 1980's Battlezone, which used a similar periscope-style view. The game's unique approach and competitive edge made it a memorable hit in the early days of arcade gaming. Seawolf's groundbreaking use of a periscope set a new standard in gaming, but as video games continued to evolve, could storytelling replace flashy visuals in the next big thing? In 1977, when most people were trying to figure out how to make pictures appear on computer screens, 4 students at MIT had a different idea. They created Zork, a text-based game that built on the earlier Colossal Cave adventure from 1976. Unlike previous games, which had minimal action and no real story, Zork and its predecessor introduced players to rich, immersive worlds described entirely through text. In Zork, players guide their adventurer by typing in commands, aiming to collect specific treasures from the mysterious Great Underground Empire. The game's popularity showed that there was a huge audience for story-driven adventures, proving that a game didn't need fancy graphics to be captivating. Zork's success paved the way for other text-based games and ultimately influenced the development of modern role-playing games, which still captivate players around the world with their engaging stories and expansive worlds. Zork's success proved that captivating storytelling could drive a game's popularity without advanced graphics. But as the gaming world evolved, how did arcade classics like Space Invaders push the boundaries of gameplay and influence the industry? Space Invaders, released in 1978, is a fun and engaging game where you control a small cannon that moves side to side on the screen. You're protected by 4 green barriers that slowly wear down as you and the alien fleet exchange fire. As the insect-like ships approach, they speed up, making the game both exciting and challenging. Although not the first game to feature alien shootouts, Space Invaders was groundbreaking as it had the aliens firing back. The game introduced a continuous, catchy background soundtrack made up of a few simple bass notes, a feature that became a staple in the gaming world. Space Invaders was wildly successful, so much so that new arcades were built just for it. In Japan, it became so popular that it caused a coin shortage, prompting the government to increase the yen supply by 4 times. Space Invaders' groundbreaking features and immense popularity set a high bar for arcade games. But could the next big hit top its success? Asteroids, released by Atari in 1978, might seem simple at first glance, but it's packed with excitement. Players control a spaceship trapped in an asteroid field, dodging and destroying asteroids while fending off attacks from sneaky flying saucers. The game's challenge ramps up the longer you play, making it one of the most thrilling experiences of its time. Asteroids quickly became a massive hit, selling over 70,000 units and surpassing Space Invaders in popularity. You could spot it in the background of many movies and TV shows from that era. Asteroids not only set sales records, with Atari earning about $150 million, but arcade owners also saw over $500 million from eager players. Its influence on future games and its status as a Golden Age classic are undeniable. As we look at how Asteroids shaped the gaming world with its groundbreaking success, you might be curious about the origins of arcade gaming itself. What was the first step that led to these iconic games? Back in 1971, a game called Computer Space made history, even though many people today have never heard of it. Created by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney, who would later start Atari, it was the world's first arcade video game and the first to be commercially available. The game itself was simple, featuring a star's cape where players controlled a spaceship shooting at UFOs. But what really stood out was the cabinet. With its sleek fiberglass design, it looked like something straight out of the future and even appeared in the 1973 movie Soylent Green. Although Computer Space sold 1,500 units, it wasn't a big financial hit. However, it paved the way for arcade games by proving there was a market for them. Shortly after, Bushnell and Dabney launched Atari with Pong, which became a much bigger success. As we've seen how Computer Space set the stage for arcade games, you might be curious about how educational games began to shape learning in schools. In 1971, Don Rowich, Bill Heinemann, and Paul Dillenberger created the Oregon Trail, a game designed to teach 8th graders about life on the Oregon Trail in the 19th century. Although it wasn't published initially, it inspired a whole series of games over the next 50 years. By 1974, Rowich joined the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, where he updated the game for better historical accuracy and shared it on their network. The following year, the game was renamed Oregon and was distributed to schools. It quickly became a hit, with thousands of students playing it every month. Eventually, Oregon was updated and rebranded as Oregon Trail, influencing educational games and educating millions of children. It's still a favorite today, recently making a comeback as a handheld game by Basic Fun. As we've seen, playing video games in the 1970s was a unique blend of simplicity and innovation that laid the groundwork for today's gaming culture. What's your favorite retro game from that era? If you enjoyed this journey through gaming history, like, share, and subscribe for more nostalgic content. And we'll see you next time.